My name is John Stapleton, and I've spent most of my career in the food industry, building brands, selling products, understanding what makes people buy. I was always conscious the industry was complicit in generating what we know as the obesity generation. But I focused my own professional efforts on creating healthy products. Certainly not products that do you any harm or do you any damage. My focus has been to create products that do good for the individual and also do good for my own businesses. Then a drug came along that's about to change what people want entirely. GLP-1. You may have heard of it as Ozempic or Mounjaro. It started as a diabetes treatment, and now it's been taken by millions of people to manage their weight. I spoke to doctors, nutritionists, patients, and food industry insiders to understand what this drug really is all about, whether it's as safe as you might think, and who's actually in control of it. A drug that removes people's appetite and changes what they crave is not just a health story, it's an existential challenge to an entire industry. GLP-1 though, I mean, it's a thing, it's here and now, it's about to get bigger. What's your view?
I think it's fascinating. I think it's completely and utterly disruptive. And I think if you ignore it, that will be to your peril if you're in the food industry.
A lot of people reducing their food intake through GLP-1 feels like it's creating a movement where we're going to change
a perfect storm in a positive sense.
Storm in a positive way. Well, I see it as a positive thing where you're going to see consumer attitudes and what consumers' food preferences are changing.
25% in convenience sales will drop in the next 3 to 5 years. Will disappear because of a knock-on effect. Because it's not that people are eating less, they're skipping meals, they don't drink as much, they don't booze as much, they don't eat chocolate. So when you think about convenience, that is the holy grail of convenience, right?
I think what's interesting about this, you never quite know when you have a huge change in the system, the effects that will bubble up in interesting places. One of the most obvious is corner shops. I mean, literally, the category in corner shop that's called an impulse buy, it is a craving, and what they pay their rent of those shops with is lottery tickets, cigarettes, vapes, alcohol, ice cream, chocolate, crisps. The desire for those things is reduced by the drug. So what happens to those stores? What do they replace that space with? How do they pay their rent? So you could see like the high street changing as a result of this.
Let's understand what GLP-1 is, because a lot of people kind of assume it's a weight management or weight loss drug, but how does it work? And then we can talk about how it affects people in different ways.
So a GLP-1 it works like your hormones work. So we have GLP-1s in our guts, and they're activated when we eat.
So we make them ourselves in the body? Right.
Not to the same level that we are injecting them at, and that's quite critical. So when you eat, your body, you have hormones which then give signals to the rest of your body to do certain things. GLP-1s give signals to stop your gut from emptying so quickly. So it keeps the food in your stomach slightly longer, so it leaves you with a feeling of fullness slightly longer. It also releases another hormone that tells the liver to excrete glucose into the bloodstream. Then it also has an effect on speaking to the hypothalamus, which is the center of our brains where our appetite and our satiety is controlled. So it does kind of a three-pronged approach where it keeps the food in your gut for longer. It releases the insulin into the bloodstream, and then it also tells your brain that you're full.
With your patients, you prescribe GLP-1 in certain cases. So we'd love to know why and what you use it for, and where you see the benefits of it. But maybe just start with, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? People have views about it, but maybe talk from a medical perspective, somebody who knows something really about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult always to attribute either good or bad to any new development or any medicine or medical device. I think there's probably only a few things I can think of in the back of my head that I would say is either wholly good or wholly bad. But I think broadly net benefit is there. But like any space that develops rapidly and booms, there's a lot of bad that can come of it. And I've certainly seen the bad end of the scale. But it's like anything, in the right hands, it's very good, effective, can be done safely. In the wrong hands, it can be very dangerous to the individual, but also for when populations are getting hold of this kind of medication, that can be dangerous for the population at large as well.
Tell me why you actually started to take GLP-1? And also, like, what considerations did you have to go through, or what compromises maybe you have to consider in your own mind to take that first plunge?
So over the years, I've been a yo-yo dieter, your typical yo-yo dieter, tried everything, been heavier, been lighter, but never quite been where I wanted to be.
Right.
And I plateaued. I got to a point and I thought, why can't I budge from here? And I've done the things the so-called healthy way, the right way. Well, why am I stagnant? Why am I stopping? I visited the doctors. They blamed kind of maybe it's the hormones, maybe it's just this time of year, your metabolism's a bit slower, all the usual stuff. And then the more I saw about things like Monjaro online, I started thinking, oh, would that assist me? Not will it cure me, but will it assist me in my journey? And so I started doing a bit of homework, thought the pros outweighed the cons from what I could see for me personally. So I gave it a go. Whatever risks come with that, I was willing to take them just to see if it was something that would help, and it did. When I was on it initially, it didn't really feel like much to begin with. My big problem was a kicker at night time, snacks. I had this massive sugar cravings. And it used to be when I used to have a glass of wine in the evenings.
It's like a little ritual as well, isn't it?
Yeah. It used to be get in, make sure the kids are all right, finish my work, close the laptop, glass of wine. Some olives, some picky bits, some chocolate. So actually the thing that I noticed the most that was great was it cut that out. I didn't have these sudden peaks of cravings. So for me, that was always my nemesis, with those peaks that always seemed to beat me, right? I've lost that battle, and this actually made me win the battle.
You weren't hungry, or you didn't?
Because I wasn't hungry, and I didn't. And when I was a bit peckish, my brain was strong enough to say, but you don't really need it. You're doing it out of habit. Same as portion control. I stopped eating when I was full up. When I did realise it started working, and I started dropping that bit of extra weight, and I felt and looked the trimmest I'd been in 20 years. Right? And I could see it starting to work.
This was how long after you'd started?
Within about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
I could feel it and I could see it.
And you were taking it on a regular, like every week or every?
No, because what I also noticed after taking the first dose, because you're supposed to take it at the same time every week.
Okay.
And then after the first 4 weeks, you go up to the next dose, and then do 4 weeks and the next dose.
And it increases, is that right?
It increases from 2.5 through to 5, 7.5, 10, 12.5, and then 15. So once I'd got to kind of 7.5, I'd kind of got the crack, and I didn't need to take it every week. I'm going to take it every bi-weekly. So I started doing that.
Under supervision, or?
No, I had no. Once you get it, that's it. You do what you want with it. So there's not that was. So I was me just making a conscious decision, because I was also conscious I didn't want to become addicted to it. Because one of the side effects I'd seen on people that I'd seen, I know a woman that had been taking it for a long time, and she had got so thin, and I thought, I don't want to get to a point where I didn't feel like I could stop.
You've got people who are utilising GLP-1s, which they definitely have their place, but they're not being monitored, they're not being helped, they're not being educated along the way, and so consequently they were ending up with bodies that were completely malnourished and depleted, and huge muscle wastage, and potentially some other very severe side effects. So I started working with patients to help guide them through the GLP journey.
What I did notice was the talk of your muscle definition going. It does take your energy. You're not eating as much food, even if you try. And some days, if I forgot to eat because I was busy, I'd get home and go, shit, I've really not eaten anything apart from a grenade bar today and a protein yogurt. Which also isn't healthy. And I'm thinking, probably had 600 calories today, 40 grams of protein, and I've got no energy to train. And then I was realising that actually, even though I was looking better in my clothes, as somebody that's always been quite toned and muscly, I could definitely sense the muscle definition was. And I don't want to look flabby and not good either when I've got no clothes. I mean, only me and the dog see it, but that's not the point, right? That's not the point.
Yeah, of course.
So
you got to feel good in your own body.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody says that, but it's so true.
It is so true. And couple that with the fact that I thought, I'm really not even enjoying food anymore. And I am such a foodie, and I love going out for dinner. So me and my dog would go out for dinner quite a lot, because it's like, I've just got me to cook for now, I'll go out for dinner. And I used to eat out all the time, and then I stopped drinking, so I'd have a glass of wine, that stopped going out for food, everything stopped.
So people do report feeling no motivation. They don't want anything. They don't feel the same joy for things anymore. So
it's suppressed appetite and suppressed a whole bunch of other things as well, which are important in life. But if you get that sort of result, surely it's got to be worth it. And it's giving me this feeling of well-being, or it making me feel a lot better about me and my own skin.
You're sacrificing eating out, maybe, and going out, nightclubs and whatever. I mean, what's that going to do to food service? And not like they need a kicking again.
Exactly.
the poor pubs and bars and what have you.
Food service, yeah, like hospitality and eating out and all those opportunities for people to eat and maybe eat less.
Well, it's quite hard to know what would happen to them if people just don't want to eat out so much and they don't want to drink so much. Does that then put even more pressure on that food service thing?
Yeah.
So I've been off of it now since, nearly about 10 months.
Right.
I had some real problems with my bowels. It was a bit unknown. I ended up going into hospital twice. I was rushed in with a couple of issues, which medically never had an answer for, which went on for a couple of months.
The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong?
No, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. There was nothing that had changed for me in terms of internally, except me taking Monjaro. It's the only thing that had changed. They had to do some tests, some scans. There was 2 times they actually said to me, we need to rule out cancers, pancreatic and bowel, which was obviously worrying. Like I said, the Monjaro was the only thing that was different, so I stopped taking it, and that was that. But then I realised the weight started to creep back on. I couldn't beat the cravings because my mental capacity, the way I've always been, and I thought, I cannot put all this weight back on. I have worked so hard, and that's when I reached out to Hannah Linnell, who's a fantastic nutritionist.
Yeah, she's a nutritionist, right.
She's a nutritionist, and I just said to her, Hannah, can I pick your brains, please? And I gave her my story, and she said, what have you been taking? What advice have you had in terms of vitamins, what you should have been taking, what nutrients, what protein? And I said, well, I haven't had any advice, really. I've just done what I thought.
And she was able to piece it all together. What safeguards really should be put in place to help people make informed decisions and to know what to expect and then to use it properly and to get the results they want?
Well, the first thing would be education. So I think open discussion and advice and guidance from the government to allow people to understand and make informed choices. So a lot of people go on this drug thinking it's a magic pill. It's just, I'm going to inject myself, lose 20% of my body weight. On an average diet, you're going to lose between 5 and 7% of your body weight. It's not about getting down to a number on a scale. You need to get to that number, but have maintained your lean muscle mass. And in order to do that, you need guidance, you need somebody supporting you need lifestyle and behavioural change, and you need to understand how to eat. It's not about eating less, it's about eating better.
You need to do your homework.
Make your eyes open, do your research,
Make
seek
you
advice.
Yes, and make sure you get somebody like a Hannah.
Yeah. A professional
around you, just to make sure you are taking the right vitamins, you are having the right nutrients, because there are days where you could easily not eat, and there were days when I forced food down myself, so I was not hungry, which in some ways you think, great, this is brilliant, my appetite that used to consume me is now not there anymore, which helped with the weight loss, but that on its own can become addictive when you start to look in the mirror and you're looking even better and even better, and that's where you've got to have self-discipline.
Push this more, and then you're into unhealthy territory again.
And when it's done the right way, with the right information and the right people around you, 100% I think it's a good thing.
We haven't done the work to educate the population, but also to think about the prevention of disease, and ultimately, disease prevention is much, much, much cheaper actually than trying to cure disease, but it requires an underlying level of education, not just to medical students, of course, the entire healthcare system, but also the population. The population need to understand that. But the population, they trust that someone's got their back, and we found that in the non-surgical aesthetic space, for example, where people generally they don't realise that it's kind of Wild West out there, and it is chaos. They think, right, I'm in the UK, even in the US, slightly more regulated than here, but I'm in this space, and it can't possibly be that no one's really got my back here. That's surely not. And this is all unconscious, I'm sure, but that means that they do make, I would say, poor decisions, poorly researched decisions.
Right now, we are completely abusing it as a nation, and I would say that probably stems from the government and their approach to it. They have about as much understanding of health as Donald Trump has of diplomacy. So it's really shocking to me the way that this has been regulated, and with all medicines, the regulation goes down to the point of prescription, as we saw earlier in the chemist, right?
Well, I think that's an interesting point, a case study in its own. We went to try and get some samples so we could just talk about it and look at it, and didn't have any in stock.
But you and I
could
could
very
go and buy
easily
it.
get it. She
That's
just said,
shocking,
about
right?
£240, you can have it.
Exactly.
Basically, and I was like, well, I thought this was for a specific need and prescribed, and
Yeah.
and it is in theory, but in practice.
Yeah. If we continue on this path now, you are ultimately going to have a state where the obesity issue that we currently have is going to be magnified, because people will have a rebound effect of going on and off if we don't treat this as a long-term medication, but we continue to treat it as if it's just a supplement.
My point of view is, whatever you think about it, it's happening. We've completely lost control of this drug as a regulated drug, so you're meant to prescribe it. Only 300,000 people are getting it on the NHS. Most of those are probably diabetes patients who were getting it previously. Maybe 40, 50,000 are getting it. So hardly any. 2.5 million people, maybe more, are buying it. And when you look at those people, it is not, as you read in all the papers, just the rich people. All the way down the income deciles, people are buying it. So people in the lowest 10% income deciles, 70% of whom are overweight or obese. Most people take it, women 30 to 49. They're taking it, 2/3 as much as in the richest decile. So this is something that people want.
What is GLP-1 going to do? How is that going to change the balance of what the food industry should do and can do and are maybe already are doing?
I think GLP-1 is just a massive disruptor, right? And so the way I see when a disruptor lands, it's an opportunity for innovation.
When you've got such seismic change in a big proportion of the population, at the moment I think we're 6% of the population, soon to be 10%, and there's some predictions to be 35% by 2030.
Wow.
That's an enormous amount of change.
In a short period of time.
In a very short period of time. If you just go back in history, I think in 1950, 1% of the population was considered obese. Now it's 30%. And the issue that was in there was ultra-processed foods and high calorie intake, which was high margin, is high margin, and that will come under huge pressure, I think. And the knock-on effect of that might be that if margins are being squeezed in places where high margins used to exist, then are the supermarkets going to put more pressure on suppliers to try and drive price down and squeeze margins and what have you. So I think there's going to be massive short-term disruption in terms of adjusting to the new norm.
I think I'll speak on behalf of the food industry in the UK. They've been reformulating products for years, but we need to start reformulating customers' diets. And so the work that the government are doing just now in a healthy food standard, that combined with a lot of people reducing their food intake through GLP-1 feels like it's creating a movement where we're going to change
a perfect storm in a positive sense.
Storm in a positive way. Well, I see it as a positive thing where you're going to see consumer attitudes and what consumers' food preferences are changing, and the food industry needs to respond to that, and I think they are. I think it would be unfair to say they're not. I think there's loads of opportunities to do more.
I think the supermarkets, I think companies will create products. They'll find ways. Volume of food's coming down. So food companies, in order to grow their revenue lines, will need to either win share from others or increase the price of food. Those are the only two ways you can grow revenue.
Business,
or shrink.
When I talked to the ex-category director of Tesco's, he said, my biggest nervousness is that 25% in convenience sales in Tesco Express will drop in the next 3 to 5 years, will disappear because of a knock-on effect. Because it's not that people are eating less, they're skipping meals, they're skipping bad behavior, so they don't drink as much, they don't booze as much, they don't eat chocolate. So when you think about convenience, that is the holy grail of convenience, right? Is that grab and go when you have a craving, and that craving is disappearing. So the industry is quite nervous about that, because it's not just that they're eating less, they're skipping meals.
I think what's interesting about this, you never quite know when you have a huge change in the system, the effects that will bubble up in interesting places. One of the most obvious is corner shops. I mean, literally, the category in corner shop is called an impulse buy. It is a craving, and corner shops, the current profitability, what they pay their rent of those shops with, is lottery tickets, cigarettes, vapes, alcohol, ice cream, chocolate, crisps. all of which potentially we know for, it looks like it's likely for alcohol, quite likely for cigarettes and vapes, not sure for gambling yet, but maybe the desire for those things is reduced by the drug. So what happens to those stores? What do they replace that space with? How do they pay their rent? So you could see like the high street changing as a result of this. Unexpected businesses will go bust. Unexpected businesses will start to make lots of money. It looks like people spend a bit more actually on beauty treatment because they're obviously a lot more on clothes because you're having to change your wardrobe. Spending less on going out in restaurants at the moment, although at the high end, there's some evidence that the frequency is more often because people used to avoid going out because they saw that as a dangerous thing, and now they can enjoy it without having to eat much. You've got terrible food waste now in high-end restaurants. People just push things around on their plate, but that will change.
If you look at data from the States, because people have been on medication longer there, you see that people's sensory preferences change for sweet and fatty foods. So therefore, your kind of HFSS foods that there's regulation around anyway are probably the ones that are most likely to be affected. Now, it doesn't mean that people won't have desserts, but if you go and look to buy a dessert now, they're in massive portion sizes. So there's probably a opportunity around portion size with indulgent food, and we're starting to see it coming through in restaurants. Small plates, sharing plates, people can still enjoy food, they just want less of it.
The GLP-1 thing is going to become a consumer-led demand rather than a policy one or big corporate one, because they're the ones that are having appetite suppressants that are demanding less food on their plate, and they're steering towards a more nutrient dense sort of smaller portions. And so if you do that whole supply and demand thing and you're a supplier, you need to keep up with the demand, and so you need a flex, and there will be casualties along the way, but there will also be a need for a growing population demanding a better food system.
So the future, if not the immediate future, it looks like a reduction of appetite, therefore a reduction of demand. The volume is going to come down, but demand is going to increase for the right types of food that are GLP-1 compliant or GLP-1 friendly.
And labelled, and the advice that you might get from doctors and schools.
To support that.
And that's where policy probably needs to step up and say, look, we accept that this is becoming a new norm, let's educate the population more about it.
What can and already are some of the retailers doing?
How I've seen people respond so far is more in the ready meal space. So people have kind of evolved their ready meals, whether they're nutrient dense ready meals on the shelves, which have got really good ingredients. So they're all built on what are healthy ingredients that you should be eating in your diet. Then we've seen sort of calorie controlled meals being repositioned with slightly more protein and fibre and smaller portions.
At the moment, loads of different retailers take different approaches, not consistent. They're testing, and I think it's a really exciting time for the food industry, because I think it will have a halo effect not just for people who are on the drug, but also for mainstream consumer, because when they learn more about nutrients and protein and fibre, and suddenly people are like, even people who are not on the drug, they're like, well, I want to eat something which is good for me and better for me and does all those things. So I think for people on the drug, they're the ones who are going to drive it. They're going to drive the change. They're going to be the people who talk to their friends and family about, like, I eat less, but when I want to eat well. So I gravitate towards a fiber-dense and protein-rich ingredient list rather than just eating something poorly because I need the nutrition.
What do you think the industry should do? Should it have GLP-1 friendly splashed all over the front, or should it be much more subtle than that? Or will people get it because they're now looking for healthy products to accompany their changing lifestyle? So how aggressive should the industry be, or blatant should the industry be about GLP-1, or this is about health, it's about lifestyle? Where should that be pitched?
It's really interesting because I think it's a bit too early to say, and you see that already in all the retailers. Waitrose is going after 30 fruit and veg in a week. Marks and Spencer goes after nutrient-dense food proposition. Morrison has a GLP-1 friendly range and segment in their store.
And they call it GLP-1 friendly.
They call it GLP-1. So I think at the moment it's still a small market size, right? So the population who is on the drug is obviously growing, but it's still quite small. What I can see as an opportunity is, so for example, Ocado always does a really good job in tagging products on their platform. So further down the line, they might have like veg-rich solution in their basket, or they might have a GLP-1 friendly, because it's online, right? So nobody can see how
Nobody's
you shop.
looking at you. Yeah. Should brands also go down the road of labeling GLP-1? Should it be really in your face? This is a GLP-1 compliant product.
I'm not sure what a GLP-1 compliant product is. So if I'm like sort of sitting here, I'm like, well, what does that mean? Is it just a smaller portion? There's probably a better way of saying that. So it seems to be, if you look in the market now, there's some people using GLP-1 friendly or which I get, and then there's other people that have chosen not to go down that route. So it'll be interesting where it plays out. I could see how you could maybe develop GLP-1 supplement or protein drink kind of blends potentially.
I've been seeing in the Future of Food competition these entries of properly, not today, not 3 years, not 5 years, but the 10 and 20 year projection. That's what excites me, because it's going to come anyway. It's inevitable, and we will have short-term pain as we get there.
Tell me more about the Future of Food competition and the whole thing, the whole movement. Tell me what it's about.
It's basically a rally cry saying that we know that we've got these mega trends that are fast coming down the track at us. GLP-1s is just one of them, but there are lots of other ones, from ice caps melting to geopolitics to climate change, all sorts of things. And also you've got the progression of AI, the progression of digital technology. And
so it's all about embracing change and seeing the opportunity that change presents itself and taking the initiative and say, okay,
when we know this change is going to happen.
It's going to happen anyway. Okay, great. Yeah. And GLP-1 is one of those drivers.
Is GLP-1 a good thing or a bad thing? I think people get a bit confused by this question. So, the argument for it being a bad thing is we created a society where the food system, because the commercial incentives of companies fed on our evolved appetite, and they increasingly created foods that were scientifically designed to make us eat more of them, and then made us fat, and food became by far the biggest cause of avoidable ill health, pulling down the health service. And now, rather than dealing with that, we're just going to give a drug that's going to change our millions of years of evolved appetite. And people say, like, what kind of society are we? What do you do about children? Do you let them get fat and then inject them at 16? Do you start injecting them when they're younger? And, it causes a lot of moral concern in people. There is a lot of judgment in society. Funny enough, if people know someone who's been on the drug, they're a bit more forgiving, because they've seen, if it's a good friend, they've seen the struggle this person has had all their life. But if they don't know that person, it's often seen as though, they're, this is the quick fix, they're too lazy, they don't have the willpower, etc., etc., etc. And even amongst, as has always been the case, amongst people who are obese themselves, they're very self-blaming. It's why mental health amongst obese people is one of the reasons why it's so bad, is because they think it's failing in them. Whereas actually, that just cannot be the case. This wave of obesity has happened over a period where it's impossible that we've suddenly evolved lower willpower. There is clearly, we know there is a genetic, about 70% of obesity is genetic. There's a genetic thing that makes you partial to the toxic food culture that we have, and that makes it very hard to maintain weight.
It's fascinating, and this is already happening, like you're saying. This is not like what if. This is beginning.
5% of the UK population.
And nobody's going to stop.
Yeah.
We can't stop this. This is actually happening, right? And it's going to continue to grow dramatically, and we've seen the figures from the States, and we're like to follow. Right?
Yes.
Before I made this film, I had a fairly simple view. Fat people were fat because they lacked willpower and discipline. Cut back your intake, exercise more, manage yourself. I was wrong about that. Obesity is a disease. And the people I spoke to, the patients, the doctors, the nutritionists, they've been dealing with that reality for years, while the rest of us look the other way. GLP-1 is not a magic drug, but used properly with professional support as one part of a holistic approach to weight management, it can be genuinely life-changing. The problem is that right now, most people are not using it in that way. They're doing it alone, without guidance, without monitoring, and without anybody checking in. And the food industry, which has been complicit in fueling this epidemic for decades, is only just beginning to wake up to what this means. Because here's the thing, GLP-1 is about to become a revolution. The oral pill is coming, the cost is coming down. Millions more people are going to be on this drug. And that is either the biggest opportunity the food industry has had in a generation to finally move in a more healthy direction, led not by regulation or by taxation, but by consumer demand, or it is another chance we're going to waste. The question is not whether this revolution is coming. It is. The question is whether we, as a society, and the food industry in particular, will rise to it. Or whether, as we have done so many times before, we will let our appetite for cheap food, quick fixes, and easy answers get in the way. That question doesn't have an answer yet, but as far as I'm concerned, it will sooner rather than later. There's a lot of change, a lot of risk, a lot of disruption. It seems like a perfect environment for entrepreneurs to take advantage of this trend and rush into it and take advantage of the next 3, 5, 10 years. It sounds like it's not something that's going to go away. It's going to increase in appeal for the consumer.
Where there's change, there's money.